Let's close our eyes together. Let's open our hearts to this story. Let's open our minds to this story. Close your eyes, keep them closed for a little while because we're going to go back in time and we're going to go back now to a room. It's called the upper room for those who wanted to go to Jerusalem. Look, we're going to Jerusalem now, entering a building that is known today as the upper room. Do you see that it has an Islamic architectural appearance? That's because it was occupied by Christians, then reoccupied, and later the Muslims came. There are Christian inscriptions. There's a cross inside. There are inscriptions that mention Allah with verses from the Quran, but the ones inside are Christian. Pope Francis has even prayed inside there. Popes usually pray there because it's the place of the Last Supper. Oh, it wasn't there. It doesn't have that column. No, it doesn't have it. But tradition leads us to believe that it was in this place, the little house, which has been changed, very much changed over time. All right, but the historical place would be this one, where that very important dinner happened, which the Gospels tell us was on the second floor of a house in Jerusalem. So we are here with the time machine set to go back to the year 33 on our calendar. We move forward a little, and now we are in the year 33 approximately. We know it's not certain that Jesus was born in the year 0. It could have been a little earlier. It probably was a little earlier, but that's not the topic for today. Anyway, around the year 33, that's where we are now. More specifically, on the night when Jesus gathered with the apostles for the Seder dinner. Look, this word isn't very common for Christians. But yesterday I spoke with a family very close to me in Jerusalem. They're no longer in Jerusalem. They've moved to the outskirts of Tel Aviv. They had just done it with the family. The Seder dinner, which was the dinner that Jesus had that night with his apostles, is the Jewish Passover dinner. Today they eat unleavened bread. They eat unprocessed bread, actually. It's more like a cracker. It's the matzah, which is a German tradition. They changed it a bit. It's a European tradition. But for many people, it's still the day to eat lamb. I'd like to start by asking, so we can understand what's happening, if there's a lamb on this table, can anyone answer me? Look, a lot of people are already writing to me here about Judas, so go ahead, ask me then, tell me then. If there's a lamb on the table at this dinner at the Last Supper, is there a lamb on the table? Some people have already thought like this, the Lamb of God is there, but that's a later view. It's a later understanding. Some people are saying, no, there's no lamb. The lamb is Jesus. Jacqueline Silva said there is. Daniel is saying there's a lamb. Some people said no way. So we already have a big controversy here about whether it's a Jewish Passover dinner. There has to be lamb. Folks, there has to be lamb. Then we start to think, but hey, in Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, let's look at the Last Supper. In Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, the plates are empty, right? And da Vinci didn't put any lamb there in the middle. There are some little breads, but look, guys, the Last Supper that he made for us, that he gave to us, our imagination is very much based on it, on this painting. It's a painting that has a very Italian image of the Last Supper. Look at this table, look at this stone, check out the setting. And more than anything, that little bread on the table couldn't be eaten at the Jewish Passover because it has yeast, so it's not allowed. Not even the thick bread is suitable for Passover. This is an Italian bread that Leonardo da Vinci put there, and there's no lamb either, right? Leonardo da Vinci chose fish, which are typical of the Mediterranean. That's fine, there are fish. The Holy Land also reaches the Mediterranean, but we are in Jerusalem, far from the Mediterranean Sea, near the Sea of Galilee. A little, not that much, there is fish, and fish, in fact, is fundamental. The meeting of Jesus with the first apostles, according to the Gospels, happens during a fishing trip in St. Peter's boat, one of the greatest symbols of Christianity. So Leonardo da Vinci used Christian symbols from his own time already in the Renaissance. So da Vinci, he didn't put lamb, but Leo, show us a painting with lamb on the table. So we can see that some artists understood, as I understand, as history understands it. Yes, guys, there was a lamb on the table, so we can say, yes, there was a lamb on the table and another at the table. The Lamb of God, as it is understood today by Christianity, was there among them. But then I ask, let's go back to our Da Vinci painting because I want to ask the question, so who is the disciple to the right of Jesus with the cloak? Of course, John, 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 and John. Everyone's saying Jefferson said Judas. No, Jefferson is not Judas. And Monica brought mentioned Mary Magdalene, so most people understand that one is John. Jacqueline Silva is also saying here Maria, but I think she's talking about Magdalene, not Maria and Magdalene, which is the big question because of the image, guys. Look closely. If we look here, it's clearly a female figure. It takes a lot of effort to see in this character painted by Da Vinci a man. It's hard to think it's John. You really have to make an effort, even if he's younger. It's a very feminine figure. We know that Da Vinci also depicts figures that can look more feminine or more masculine, but here it's a very feminine character. We have every reason to think it could be Magdalene, but again, well, first, that's the theory that some people have said here that it's Mary Magdalene. That's the one defended by the writer Dan Brown in the Da Vinci Code, which was a blockbuster book. It sold like crazy, was made into a movie, sold like crazy, was widely watched, and bothered a lot of people. Because of the falsehoods, obviously, it brings a lot of falsehoods. Marriages, Jesus, a child, that whole story, which is fiction, we know that. But it's very likely, folks, that Magdalene was at that dinner because she was with Jesus the whole time. All the documents show us the importance of Magdalene, and the Gospel of John itself says that she was the first witness of the resurrection. So we understand that Mary Magdalene is at this dinner, and Da Vinci must have understood that too because he didn't put Magdalene anywhere else. We tend to think it was Jesus and the apostles, but we can't forget about this. Da Vinci's theory is very fanciful overall, but regarding the presence of Magdalene at the Last Supper, I think we have to open our minds to understand that it's most likely she was there, yes. And well, we also have to think about Jesus' mother, not as that character, but this supper we're witnessing now, we have to consider that Mary could also have been at this supper. Let's say she didn't sit at the table with the apostles, she was in a corner watching, observing, but it's very likely that she was there. We can even think that she was nearby, that's for sure. We can think that maybe she was at Lazarus's house with Martha and Mary of Bethany, as she became known because she was from Bethany. It's possible that Mary was there, but how? She will be with Jesus the whole time. She will be with him at the foot of the cross, and later she will be with the apostles in that same house, in that same upper room. On the day of Pentecost, it is very likely that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was also there. The important thing then is that we are building the scene that Da Vinci shows us and others show us. But now we will in a little while take a closer look at the scene where it happens. The moment when Jesus says that one of the apostles, one of them there, will betray the master, will betray Jesus. So I'd like to invite you now to take a quick trip to the Louvre Museum because there's a fantastic painting there that will help us understand this moment. Let's go there, Leo. Cut to the Louvre Museum. Well, we're going to start our tour of the Louvre Museum now to understand Holy Week through the Last Supper, which probably happened on a Thursday, which was the Seder dinner, the ceremonial Passover celebration. And, well, this is a different work from what we're used to seeing. Let me sit here to admire it. We're very used to seeing Da Vinci's painting, The Last Supper, but this one has some interesting and different characteristics. First, look, there are 13 people. There's Jesus and the 12 apostles. We can see that. But there are two people there in a corner who are not mentioned in the Gospels. It took me a little while here trying to find Judas, but it wasn't hard. No, look at him there. Look, with his hand hidden behind his back there. Look, with the 30 pieces of silver he's going to get later. For betraying Jesus to the Romans, it's already symbolic, right? Because at this moment, he's being informed by Jesus. Jesus is saying, one of you will betray me. Who is going to betray me? And we already have Judas kind of giving himself away there. Judas is already saying, Master, is it me? And he apparently knows because the painter is suggesting that. Look there, the little bag, the bag of coins, it's Judas, already aware of what he's going to do. In other words, a premeditated crime, according to this painter, because we know there are several versions of this. But even in the different books, even if we take into account the Gnostics who have the Gospel of Judas, he is always portrayed as a traitor, and his intention apparently is to make money. And he would have been buried in Akeldama, the field of blood that still exists today in Jerusalem. Well, there is a place called Akeldama. Whether it's the same one, we don't know, right? And look, folks, there's a detail I wanted to show as well. Let's go over there. There's no lamb on the table. In many Last Suppers, many paintings of the Last Supper, there's a lamb here on the table. In this one, that's always a question. I think every painter must have this question, which is, do I put the lamb on the table or not? Because if the lamb is Jesus himself, since Jesus replaces the sacrifice that was made in the temple, remember, folks, that the sacrifice comes from the Canaanites. The idea of sacrificing animals to please God dates back to Abraham's time. And when Jesus is crucified, that sacrifice is meant to end, at least for those who follow Jesus, who will later be called Christians. The sacrifice is Jesus himself. There's no more lamb on the table. Now the lamb is sitting at the table. He is the one who will be sacrificed to save all humanity from sin. At the same time, that's what this painting is telling us. Want to know much more about the story of Jesus? Just point your phone's camera at this QR code here on the screen. Or you can go directly to the link that's down here in the video description. I'll see you in the classroom.